Good evening, everyone, from Nashville. It is Monday, April 12th. I'm Charles Brown, Portfolio Manager with CB3 Financial. From COVID to U.S. politics to the world economy to clarity. This is CB3 Live and your Monday market mashup. We're glad you're with us. Tonight's topics: earnings season begins on Wednesday. It's an exciting time for those of us in the industry. I always enjoy this time because I think it's when the earnings come out is when the real truth of what the companies are telling you for the previous month really comes true. Either they've been misrepresenting how successful they are, or in fact it comes true. And of course that's what we want, because those are the companies that we want to bet on and have in our portfolios. So it begins on Wednesday. I'll have more for you Thursday night. If you're new to the program, please subscribe to us. Click the little bell so that you get updates when we go live on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. For those of you that have been following the program, you know that we talk about COVID, U.S. policy, and the world economy. The truth is, I am just an investor just like you guys are. Yes, I'm a portfolio manager and an educator, but when I'm doing these programs, I always ask myself two questions. My goal is to make sure that I can encourage you with these broadcasts and that I can help you become more financially successful. If you're a client, we're working on that, of course, in partnership with you. If you're just listening to get education, that's fine, but that's the purpose of this program and the one on Thursday night. So in COVID, the U.S. reported another daily record of COVID vaccinations, pushing the weekly average now above 3.2 million people vaccinated. We're at about 23% of the entire country vaccinated. We'll be there by midsummer. Everyone that wants to be vaccinated will be able to be. I couldn't help but notice that in Tennessee, the share of small businesses still closed stands at 24%, which is the sixth lowest among the U.S. states. Now, I mention this because I'm a recent convert from Illinois to Tennessee, but I think that you guys need to be aware of how your state is doing. How has small business been affected in your state? Because that is largely on the shoulders of your governor and your state administrators. And if you're living in a state where small businesses have been crushed, I think you really need to evaluate if they have handled COVID in the right way. Okay, I think that that's an important topic for each of us. U.S. policy is next. U.S. policy is very, very important because policy is derived from politics, and policy affects our personal well-being. That's why it has a personal impact, and it definitely has a portfolio impact. What's happening right now on the policy front is that Joe Biden has proposed new taxes, and you're probably aware of this. We certainly have been talking about it in previous shows. The current proposal for the infrastructure probably could kill 1 million jobs minimum and harm the economy, according to the Manufacturers Association in the states here. In fact, in the opinion, I'm reading this now, for the Tax Reform Act of 2017, under the previous administration, acted like rocket fuel. And if the Biden administration rolls back these reforms, millions of workers could lose jobs. That's an independent source. It's a nonpartisan source, one that's simply focusing on successful businesses, small and large, in this country. So we'll talk about that more on Thursday as I explore that. The world economy is our third of the three topics, and we break this down into 6 subsegments: the weekly market review, a featured stock, economic indicators, the Fed, housing market, and the cryptocurrency. There's been a lot of interest over the last 4 to 6 months, so we've made crypto a regular feature here. So looking at the weekly market review today, a pretty quiet day in the market, but what I want to draw your attention to is the fact that the Russell has pulled back from its peak of about up 18% on the year, and the Dow is coming closer to catching it. S&P has actually overtaken the Dow, and the NASDAQ and the Dow are now neck and neck. I think that's important because for most of the year, the S&P has been lagging badly, but now it's moving in to catch up. So the Russell is starting to weaken. Now, this is something that could be an issue down the road. Again, we need all asset classes to be working in a secular bull market. So I'm not going to be too concerned about the small caps just yet, but I do have my eye on it for sure. The stock market today really traded little change. Investors are waiting to see what happens with the big banks' earnings that come out Wednesday morning, and we'll know that by the time of our broadcast on Thursday. So I would say that investors just taking basically a wait and see attitude, looking for corporate earnings and key economic data later this week. 8 of the 11 S&P sectors did close higher today, so we're still seeing lifetime highs in the Dow and the S&P, albeit pretty moderate ones, but still that's positive to me. So next on the list here, the stock of the week. This is going to be a little different this week. XLC, it's not actually a stock. It's an exchange-traded fund, and the reason I'm going to cover it is because it's the communications sector, and it's the best-performing ETF in our diversified growth portfolio. Normally, I feature stocks that are in capital growth, or CG, and strategic growth, SG, but this week I want to cover one in DG, and I think you'll find this interesting as we talk about that ETF. In economic indicators, the ISM service release added even more energy to the rally that we've been seeing here, so I'm taking that as a positive. At 63.7, the March read, now again, we're looking backwards here to look at March, the highest ever, up from 55, and all 18 service sectors reported growth in March. I've been telling you that we have to have these kinds of data points if the secular bull market's going to continue, and so far, I'm not having any disappointments in this market in the area of economic indicators. I'll expand on that Thursday night. As far as the Fed goes, Jerome Powell, he's just an amazing guy. His latest quote this week is, "Viruses are no respecters of borders, and until the world really is vaccinated, all vaccinated, we're going to be at risk of new mutations. I'm wondering why the chairman of the Federal Reserve is now getting into the medical prediction business. I wish he would just stick to what he does best, which is governing the Fed." He did say in a 60-minute interview on Sunday that the forecast for U.S. economic growth and jobs growth are both looking strong, and the central bank, even with those strong predictions, is very unlikely to budge moving interest rates this year and even next year. So he's standing by what he's been saying over the last 12 to 15 months, and I'm encouraged by that. Low interest rates is what we want to see as investors, for sure. In the housing market, some pretty good news here that we're expecting to see coming out later this week. We have March Home Builders Index, building permits and housing starts. As you guys well know, I'm a big fan of the housing market simply because I'm watching the stats all over the country, not just in the conservative or southern parts of the country, but all over the country. We're seeing very, very strong housing data, and it's been a seller's market for well over a year, certainly since the pandemic began. And we'll have more on that for you Thursday night as well. And then finally, the crypto corner. So this is maybe the most interesting bit of data for me to bring to you. I mentioned this last Thursday night that China has launched their digital yuan. And there's an article in a Chinese paper here saying, "Bye-bye, Bitcoin," with 2 question marks. There's no bye-bye on Bitcoin just because the Chinese have launched a digital currency. They're basically saying that they're going to have the ability to control anonymity. Do you believe that from the Chinese? Meaning that the buyer and seller can be anonymous if they want, but the government can readily track suspicious transactions. Folks, all this is a digital version of the same kind of financial oppression that the Chinese have inflicted on their people for hundreds of years. I'm glad they've developed this digital currency. We'll see if it really gains some traction. I do not see this as any kind of threat. It's certainly at this point to the dollar or the dollar's status as the reserve currency. It's just not going to happen. They are, however, in a position to benefit if people use their digital currency to purchase admission, whatever they're going to do for the 2022 Beijing Olympics. So that should be kind of interesting to see as we go forward. And we're going to resume this week on the investing in post-COVID America. So we also are having a series on energy, so the American energy portfolio, and we're not going to do anything on that this week because I'm working on a special guest that's a very knowledgeable on the hydro energy market space, and I think that's something you guys are really going to enjoy. But as far as investing in post-COVID America, this is an important topic because really the biggest risk is not anything to do with COVID or anything to do with earnings reports or the traditional metrics that we use to evaluate the stock market. It has to do with, are we going to be able to maintain free markets with the culture of governance in America moving towards socialism? In a speech by Ronald Reagan delivered in 1961 entitled Encroaching Control, he cited Nikita Khrushchev, who said that Russia could introduce small doses of communism to the U.S., and they wouldn't even know that they were being changed into socialism until one day they woke up and found out that's what they were. And folks, that is really what is happening today, in my opinion. I will thoroughly be covering this phenomena, which is the biggest risk to us as investors. And I wanted you to know that, okay? I think it's important that you understand that that's what the risks are here in America. So that's the show here for Monday. Be sure that you join us on Thursday night for CB3 Live. Lots of interesting topics, expansions on what you've seen here. And we will take your questions live as we always do. This is Monday, April 12th. I'm Charles Brown, Portfolio Manager with CB3 Financial, where we don't just manage your assets, we become one of them as well. From COVID to clarity, this is CB3 Live and your Monday Market Mashup.